senior Bernie advisor, Chuck Rocha, went on Rising with Crystal and Sagar on Hill TV, and they spoke about the issue of polling. This is interesting. Take a look.
All these polls come out, external polls. I know you all have your own internal polls, but as you're looking at these external polls, like, how do you think about them? How do you know what to take seriously? Because they can be sort of all over the map.
The way I judge it is the establishment quo of pollsters will go talk to people who they think that will go vote. This is what the viewers need to really understand when you're dissecting a poll is pollsters are guessing. And the point is, are they guessing right? Mm-hmm. And they're guessing on who's going to show up in a Democratic primary. That's easier in South Carolina and New Hampshire because there's a lot of historical data. When you talk about a microcosm of the electorate, which is Nevada, which is Iowa, it's hard to get it right because you're only talking about maybe 180, that's a guess, on how many, 4.5 million people in Iowa who will really show up. The way Barack Obama won this thing is there was a lot of people showed up that nobody intended on. Exactly. That's what Bernie Sanders is counting on. If you take the establishment in every state of who always votes in a Democratic primary, we're doing okay. We're in the top 3 with everybody else. When you add in infrequent voters and new registered voters into any poll, guess who skyrockets to the top? We do. That's why this campaign is focused on bringing new people, as Bernie says, from the stump into the process. We need more people voting because when they do, Bernie Sanders does better and America will do better.
That's such an important point. That's why Donald Trump beat all the polls in 2016.
Nobody saw him coming. I could show you that data across Florida. It was a death of 1,000 cuts. It was 1% in this little county, 2%, and that only might have meant 15 or 16 different people. But over every county, that's exactly right. I tell them that all the time.
All right, that's a really good point. And, you know, this is one of the reasons I've tried to not cover as much polling this election cycle. Sometimes I can't help myself if the poll is super interesting. But I tried not to cover as much as I did in 2016 for that reason, because any election that Bernie Sanders is going to win is going to have insanely high turnout. Insanely high turnout. And because when turnout goes up, that means more young people came out. Because the older folks typically always vote. So they're a given. But when turnout goes up, that means younger people are getting out in massively high numbers. What's the word I'm looking for? In droves? I think that's the word I'm looking for. And he wins among young people by 1.5 miles. His poll numbers among young people are the highest. So really, any election that Bernie Sanders would win would be legendary turnout, record high turnout. Those are the elections he's going to win. Now, that's why when you have pollsters, you know, doing what they do, and they're going, oh, let's look at likely voters. Well, if you're only doing likely voters, what are you basing it off of? 2016 turnout? If you base it off of 2016 turnout, you're going to get a very skewed picture, because that would mean turnout is pretty low. So that's why there's a little bit of a sleeper Bernie vote that we are kind of relying on in the same way, and they pointed this out like this guy did. There was that sleeper Trump vote, people who supported Trump but were too afraid to say to the pollsters, and new voters who would come into the fray and voted for Trump. People who would have sat on the sidelines, and then they came out and they voted for Trump, especially in the states that mattered for him. He targeted the proper states for the Electoral College. So it's a similar dynamic that you would see with Bernie. And the best example I could give of this is 2016 Democratic primary, Michigan. I don't know if you guys remember this, but Bernie was down massively in all the polling that had been done in Michigan. Hillary was blowing him out of the water in Michigan. I mean, it was like, I don't remember, so I don't want to, say the wrong thing, but I think it was at least 20 percentage points down, Bernie Sanders was. Could have been as high as 30 percentage points down. And then he won the primary there. Why? Overwhelmingly high turnout, staggeringly high turnout, and they went for Bernie. Young people turned out, went for Bernie, and he won. So we can do that in this election upcoming too. But we have to do that. We have to turn out people everywhere. So, but this is a longer way of me saying, don't get too down when the polls don't reflect him not doing too well. Don't get too down. Because no matter what that number is, You have to understand that any election Bernie would win would have extremely high turnout, and the polls are not accounting for that extremely high turnout because it's atypical. By definition, it's atypical. So just know that, but don't stop fighting. Get out there, make phone calls, knock on doors, all that stuff, because it's incredibly important, and this is how we win.